Welcome and good morning, Mike. Great to have you or spending time with us. And as you know, I think our partners are looking forward to get some insights from you to understand a bit the direction that Microsoft is going with Business Central and the SMB channel. And so one of the things that our partners keep asking us is, while they all are moving ahead with the digital transformation and the transformation to cloud, there are still customers, still scenarios where they need an on-prem implementation. And given the push that Microsoft is showing for cloud and specifically for the SaaS implementation, they wonder, well, is there a future, or is Microsoft pushing too hard on-prem, and then at some point in time, customers are either forced to go to SaaS, or Microsoft makes it so unattractive that people are moving, to alternatives?
Yeah, great. Well, thanks. I appreciate the time and looking forward to the conversation. Great question, and let me try to tackle that the best I can. So when you talk about, when the question comes up about support for sort of on-prem, I want to kind of break that down into a few different parts. The question can be about support for any individual release of on-prem, like when are you gonna, when's the end of life of this particular version? And there we have a pretty clear support lifecycle that you can read about and share. So I won't spend too much time in this discussion on that. Yeah. The second part of the question is, how long will Microsoft continue to release sort of new on-premise releases? How long is it going to be part of your roadmap? And the answer, honestly, is as long as we can foresee. There could be a change at some point in time, but we know, there are scenarios where people are running Business Central on an oil rig or in a country with low connectivity. It's a key part of our development story today that you can actually have kind of an on-prem release and do development against that. And so there is no secret plan to stop releasing on-prem. It really is something that we intend to support, as I said, for the foreseeable future. I worked on SharePoint and Exchange and products previously, we've continued to release on-prem for them. I expect that on-prem is going to remain a thing, but there's going to be more, so I'm not done with my answer. Another part of the question is about some of the things that are different about on-prem versus the cloud today. And so we do, from a technical perspective, we want to align our on-prem product and our cloud product as much as possible. So for example, code customization. You can imagine us, sometime in the future, locking down or sort of having the base app be fixed, and so not like having code customization, having really the same model, whether you're running for on-prem or running for the cloud in terms of how extensions works. Of course, we've already had the big move from CAL to AL, and other smaller things like running .NET code, and really trying to have the on-prem product and the cloud product truly be the same sort of core sort of fundamentals. At which point the only real difference is whether or not it's being hosted by Microsoft in the cloud or actually hosted on-prem. And when we get there, I would expect almost everybody to choose cloud unless you had specific reasons for on-prem. If you had if you're running in a very low connectivity scenario, if you're running in a situation where there are government requirements around data residency, even there we're trying to do our best to try to make sure that we solve that. And so that's kind of the rough overview. And then I will just be open that I do expect we will have innovations that are cloud only. A good example of this is the Teams integration that we did in 2020 Wave 1, where that's only part of the cloud offering and not part of the on-prem offering. And so we do want to be open with our customers that we expect the vast majority of innovation, the latest and sort of greatest capabilities, particularly when it comes to sort of service integration, to be SaaS. And so we do want to really encourage everybody to go on cloud. We're convinced it's going to be the best experience for customers, best experience for partners, most cost effective, and really best all around. But we understand it's a journey to get there. Yeah. And so, I want to sort of differentiate the journey part from sort of the technical perspective versus the, on-prem will still be there for quite some time for people that really need on-prem for the, connectivity or, in some cases, compliance reasons.
Well, that makes sense. But how do you then look at, because you said it's a journey, and
Yep.
what we do see is that many customers choose to then go from on-prem into a hosted environment, and
Yep.
We are offering together with One Click Factory Azure hosted
Yep.
environment for Business Central. So how do you look at that? Because for many customers, that is cloud with all the benefits of no longer have your data center, have flexibility to scale up and down, have managed update cycles, maybe not from Microsoft, but from the hosters. So how do you look at that in that context?
Yeah, so there's a clear pecking order in our preference. We certainly believe that sort of true cloud, true SaaS is going to be the best place in the long term for customers. It's going to allow us to deliver innovation fastest. It's going to let Microsoft, really own so many of the sort of the challenging parts of running the cloud, whether it be scaling out hardware, balancing, running things efficiently, having great storage, connecting with data lakes, connecting with Teams and the Power Platform and Power BI and the rest of the Dynamics 365. So our clear preference is cloud SaaS. Certainly, being hosted in Azure is a big improvement over running actually software on-prem. In that situation, you do have the benefits of the Azure infrastructure that obviously gets you some of the benefits that I described in terms of less worrying about hardware updates and patching the actual operating system, and there are sort of huge benefits there, and so that is a common path. My recommendation, in the path that you described is common. A thing that I would sort of suggest or ask is why the interest in that step. In some cases, it's because there's a strong technical reason. There's a code customization that won't work in BC SaaS that will work in that middle step. And then I think that middle step makes a bunch of sense. It's a great way to get customers, into something closer to a true cloud environment. And then you have time to do the migration, move things to extensions, come up with sort of that longer term story. There are some situations where you might need to do that for sort of compliance or regulatory reasons. We're always interested to hear about that. We've done work in Germany to make sure that we have data residency there, and we're going to go to sort of other countries. But if it's not for those reasons, if it's for reasons that are, there's concerns around performance. I know a very common topic is concerns about pricing of storage. That's one that we're going to tackle, and one that maybe we'll discuss later. For those kinds of things, we really think cloud is going to be ultimately the better story. And so we recognize the reality that today, certainly a year ago or 2 years ago, some of our larger customers, might have had a hard time moving to the cloud in terms of our ability to sort of scale up and scale out. We're very confident that we've made great progress on that. We believe that the performance is there today. We have a lot of large customers today. We know we have a big blocker with storage. We're gonna fix that. And so hopefully the reasons aren't, so it kind of depends on the reasons.
Yeah, but there is one reason, Mike, that you didn't mention, and that we hear from partners quite often, which has to deal with update cycles.
Yep.
And many customers actually see the fact that they are dependent on Microsoft with the update cycles being probably a bit too frequent.
Yep.
And then the concern, who's managing the update cycle in terms of having impact on the current installations and the add-ons and what have you. So how is that being factored into the objection handling, if you like?
Yeah, so I'm going to give you kind of a philosophical answer, and then we can go and kind of get into the details, which is, we want to figure that out with our partner community. We want to figure out what the right way is so that we can have that balance between trying to ensure that we can maximize innovation, getting customers the latest capabilities with that sort of stability, reliability, sort of trust that's gone in sort of a more sort of traditional kind of update cycle. And so that's where, if you look at other products from Microsoft, whether it be, SharePoint Online or Exchange, and you can say, yes, those are less mission critical than ERP, But that's debatable. If people don't have their email for a couple of days, people can get to their documents. That's sort of pretty mission critical. And so we want to work. And I know that there's a lot of questions about how we can sort of give the right flexibility and when in sort of SaaS you update, while also sort of maintaining some of our goals around not fragmenting too many versions and how things kind of go back and forth. And so, I'll say push back on me and our team, and the answer won't always be for us to slow down. In some cases, it's going to be to figure out how we can, do things at the right pace that kind of balances those. But we don't think that the right solution long term is to say run or on-prem bits. We think the right solution long term is to be running in SaaS and us giving the right set of controls, policies to let customers and partners sort of manage the upgrades at kind of the cycle that makes sense for them. And you've seen this with other D365 products like sales and finance and SEM. And so strategically, that's the direction that we're going. And and where I hear the feedback that what we're doing is not meeting customers' needs, that's good feedback for us to try to work on and improve going forward.
Yeah, and I think you're mentioning one thing that we specifically hear a lot from our partners, which is the manageability from a partner perspective. So the impact that a partner can have to manage the environment in a SaaS, and we had, I think, already good dialogue with your team on that, because that is where the current version is still at least having room for improvement, that we articulated, and that I think will help to get partners to invest more into SaaS because they feel they are in control, right? Talking a bit about positioning, I think and you certainly have heard that a couple of times. I mean, for partners that are with Dynamics for a long time, there has always been a bit of that dispute and discussion between Dynamics NAV early days and AX, and now between Dynamics 365 F&O or finance operation, and then Business Central. So what is your view in terms of the future, how Business Central will be positioned versus the, let's say, enterprise workloads around finance and operation?
Yep. So a couple things. Business Central, we do talk today about, it's our solution for small and mid-sized businesses, and F&O is our solution for enterprise and larger mid-sized. And there's obviously a fair amount of overlap. I know many great customers at QBS that are in that larger mid-market that could easily kind of go in sort of either bucket. From a functional, let me sort of differentiate from a functional perspective and from a scale sort of perspective. From a functional perspective, our thoughts with sort of Business Central is to be sort of two things: to be an absolute amazing platform for the great ISVs that we have, and we have so many great solutions built on top of the product, and to really absolutely nail ease of use, fast onboarding, simple implementation, rapid, really be a thing that can work for customers as efficiently as possible. And so we are less likely in Business Central to invest in building enterprise-specific features. If you have complex multi-geography treasury management, that's going to be in the F&O land and not sort of the BC land in terms of out of the box. Now, in the BC space, you will see partners build complex solutions on top of BC. And so if you're a big multinational enterprise that wants a more out-of-the-box, full-on financial and supply chain system, that's where F&O and SCM, and really the investments are not really overlapping at all. In terms of finance and SCM, they're really only investing kind of higher in the game, trying to be more competitive in those sort of larger enterprise accounts. And for BC, we're really focused on the classic NAV, customer set, which is, it's a big range. And so when we say, from 5 to 500, users, it's an enormous range. But in many ways, we really do believe that the work that we do to make the product easier to use, faster, makes people happy on both ends of that spectrum. Will help us with those smaller customers and the sort of larger customers. And so, it's not as definitive an answer. I think there always is going to be some sort of overlap, but I think, we aren't trying to come up with some sort of unified single ERP that's not part of our strategy. We're very committed to Business Central. We're very committed to finance and SCM, and really, if anything is happening, it's we're getting greater clarity on where we're investing in those products going forward.
But if you what I listen to you, it looks a bit like we stay on course with Business Central. I mean, that has been the traditional positioning, and as you said, there has always been an overlap. But I think, when you also announced at the virtual direction that part of the agenda is simplification, there was a bit of that sense or concern. Does that mean, or maybe it's an opportunity, does that mean that Business Central will go down in the market?
Yes.
Because simplification always looks a bit like, okay, then you have a product that comes more out of the box, that can be faster deployed. Is that part of the strategy?
Yeah, so I wish you were able to attend we had a review with James Phillips. I'm sure you all know who James is, on Monday. And I wish you guys could have had a chance to attend that, where he made his opinion loud and clear, which is, in his mind, simplification has absolutely nothing to do with enterprise versus small business versus medium business versus anything else. And so he is very, very passionate that we work incredibly hard on our most enterprise of enterprise products, making them easier to use, faster, more discoverable, quicker onboarding. And so you're going to, I don't want to speak too much outside of Business Central, but you're going to see for, you name it, F&O, the CE, field service, customer service, commerce, fraud protection, the entire spectrum of Dynamics 365 is going to be working incredibly hard on saying, how do we make it easier for customers? How do we make it easier to not just deploy, but even just to get started with, evaluate, look at, share with others? I don't want to talk too much about our competition, but any modern startup is going to have an experience where you go to the startup, you sign in, and you go. The model today, where we have a big enterprise sales force and trying to sell to different folks, is actually a big challenge for our enterprise products. It's a place where with BC, we actually have really a great strength with our fantastic kind of partner community. So I would really caution, I'm going to speak at future directions about onboarding and ease of use and simplicity, and I would not correlate that with us moving down market. Now, that isn't to say that, that there's not benefits kind of across the board, but we feel really passionate that just because a product needs to serve very sort of complicated business processes, doesn't really give us an excuse to sort of make it overly difficult to maintain, implement, understand. Just look at, some of our competitors out there have done a very nice job of trying to, if you look at the history of, say, Salesforce versus Siebel or something along those lines, that kind of simplification, I think, really makes kind of a big difference. And so, yeah, that's a great question, and I want to really, in fact, when I look at Business Central, I actually think it's going to help some of our larger customers in the most immediate term, because honestly, today it still takes a decent amount to actually, it still takes a lot of effort that go up and deploy. And what we want to do is we want to help the partners with a more complex implementation, just speed up the parts that are wrote and repeated for each customer, and really focus on the things that are truly unique or truly high value.
Perfect. And you mentioned competition. Because that's also one of the things we constantly hear from our channel is you mentioned NetSuite, and there's of course others, right? But how would you advise? How should be the Business Central? How will it be positioned against competition moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, the competitive landscape is tricky. I mean, NetSuite is certainly one that I think there's a very kind of clear mapping to. There's a lot of other, Acumatica and Sage and there's, we don't see ourselves competing with, say, a QuickBooks or a Xero, at the very kind of low end. No. And so it really is that kind of, that middle market where I think NetSuite is, and obviously NetSuite, we'll say they try to compete with F&O, and we'll have, our perspective is NetSuite's in an awkward position where if you're a true enterprise, you want to go with F&O, and then in really the SMB space, we have a better offering with Business Central. NetSuite will try to make a case that there's some placed in sort of in between. And then, of course, there's a lot of local competition. If you go around the world, in many regions, there's specific solutions in specific areas for specific industries. And so often that's actually the bigger competition, depending on where we are versus, any other sort of classic, ERP system.
Yeah, and I think part of our feedback that I think has already landed well was to basically say, well, Microsoft can do better in positioning Business Central, be vocal about Business Central, because what competitors try to do is put question marks into the thoughts of customers. Is that the secure platform investment for the next 10 years, so to speak? And I think the more Microsoft is vocal about Business Central as being, a big bet for Dynamics, I think the better we can handle those objections.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
You already mentioned it, so I have to come to that point of pricing, and there's probably these two things that our partners play back. One is obviously the database, adding additional database, which involves cost, and which partners feel like, wow, how can I explain that to my customers? And then for those customers that are international and they want to have additional production instances, that's also additional cost which they did not have before. So can you give us a bit of a sense of how this is being tackled?
Yep. So let me go through each one of those. So the storage one, we are that is the #1 topic that I'm working on. It literally is, what I believe the top blocker for many of our best partners and customers moving to the cloud. And I'm very optimistic on our solution there. So I wish I could announce something right now in this interview. I'm not quite ready to do that, but I'm hoping that we will have something that we'll be able to discuss with partners in April, and hopefully available, this spring or sort of early summer. And there's going to be, I'll say sort of two key principles. One is going to be having an allocation per user. So rather than saying, a customer with 5 users and 100 users gets the same, default 80 gigabytes, saying, hey, a customer with 100, gets, an allocation per each user. That we think will be the beginning and the end of the conversation for the vast majority of our customers. We think that we'll be able to provide an allocation that's going to meet the needs of the overwhelming majority. So our hope is to never make any money on storage or make any revenue and have that be a topic again. I would love to never discuss database storage, past the summer. And then we will, in addition, we will look at actual pricing. If there are cases that you have, a small number of users in a very large database, we will make that possible through more reasonable bulk pricing. So today, the single X dollars per gig we recognize is just not competitive. And so we'll have offerings where you can buy, say 100 gigs at a certain price that's, significantly discounted from what we have out there today. So my hope is that, we'll have, I wish I could make these things happen a little faster. There is internal Microsoft processes around, getting these actual things finalized. But I hope to actually be able to review this with partners before we announce it, and then actually announce something. But my optimism is that this is not a long-term thing. This is a thing that we'll be able to hopefully announce in April and have available, by late spring and early summer to our partners.
And does that also include then the additional production instances that you're also working on?
So let me talk about that, because that is a different topic. So on that one, I will say that that feedback is feedback that I've heard quite a bit recently, and we're still, I'll say, evaluating options. So unlike storage, where I think we're pretty far down some plans that we just want to dot our I's and cross our T's before announcing. On the environments, it's a little bit more complicated for us, because the underlying economics is a little bit of a question. So right now, with the way that our service works, if we do spin up a lot of different environments, there is a certain amount of just sort of fixed cost for us for those environments. And so with storage, we can frankly we've already done a lot of the work on storage, that we can do some of these things and still have our profit margins be perfectly healthy and have much more sort of generous. On the environment stuff, there's just going to be some work on our end to, to allow us to offer, sort of better pricing. Mm-hmm. And so there's, a couple different aspects. There's there's requests, I'll say, for more bulk, where people want to say, hey, I want to buy a bunch of different environments. I want to run in 10 different regions, and is there, can it be cheaper than buying it at? And then there's people that just want to buy, they don't necessarily want that pack of, the set of production and sandboxes. Can you sort of buy environments sort of individually? So I would expect us to address this. I think as this comes up, we want to make sure that we have sort of competitive pricing. But I don't want to make the same promise that I am with sort of storage, where I'm confident that we're going to have in the near term. This I would expect would be more of a 6-month kind of conversation in terms of us working with partners, figuring out what's possible, doing the engineering work within our service itself to make sure that we can scale out and sort of do that in a good way. And I would encourage people, if you have specific scenarios that you want to share, let me know, let the team know, so that way we can make sure we evaluate that in the process.
Okay, good. So the last topic I wanted to discuss is looking a bit more into the future. And you already mentioned the work that the team is doing to connect to teams. And I wonder, if we look at the next, let's say, 18 to 24 months, and you should give advice to our partners, where should they invest in terms of, technology, in terms of scenarios that they should explore and get ready to propose to either new customers or their existing customers. Can you talk a bit about what would be your advice?
Yeah. Great. So I'll sort of point to a few areas. You brought up Teams, so I'll just go ahead and repeat that one. We really do think that the integration of business processes and dynamics in Teams is going to be a major thing. So that's going to be the case not just for Business Central, but I think you'll see that across all of Dynamics. And so I think the scenarios where, and it's not just internal collaboration. I think you'll see scenarios where you might be working with an external customer. You might have a conversation with an external customer over Teams, and you'd want to easily be able to see what purchases that customer made in the past, information from your CRM system, potentially omni-channel communications where you could connect with them, whether it be Teams or text messages or a chat bot on your web page. So I think that sort of intersection, not just Teams, but also the general communication, that's certainly one big area. I think service to service integration, you're going to see quite a bit of innovation going forward. So for example, I'll just pick something, procurement. If you're a company and you're trying to buy things from your suppliers, today there's still a lot of manual processes where you go, you do a thing, they send an invoice, they send a thing back, you get it from your inventory. I think you're just going to see more and more of that stuff become easier and more commonplace. And so in big enterprises, you'll see things like EDI and these big complicated solutions that exist. And I think you're going to see more innovation across the board where that becomes accessible to everybody and really works. And so whether that's from customer to customer working together, customer to supplier, integration with your banks, integration with tax authorities, sort of any sort of process where you're working with another organization, another government, I think you're going to see more of that automation, and I think it's going to really dramatically improve the efficiency that our customers have going forward. And so I think that is sort of a second. And the third, it's probably an obvious one to say, is around AI and artificial intelligence. We've just barely scratched the surface on how machine learning can help customers run more efficiently. And one thing that I've heard today is hey, that's a really big deal in enterprise, but in small and medium business, it's not such a big deal because they know their customers. They don't need some algorithm to say which ones are going to purchase or which ones are going to do. And I understand that from the short term in terms of how we're investing, but in the long term, I don't buy that. I think that there's so much value of if any customer could learn, hey, if I make this offer, is this going to be worthwhile? What's the rate of return for that? When people are coming to my experiences, am I doing the right job with relationship marketing? Am I optimizing my inventory management and purchasing things in the right way? Am I keeping too much in stock or not enough in stock? Am I doing, efficient with my suppliers? All those kinds of my cash flow analysis, investing, all of those things just have a huge amount of opportunity. And the reason why AI isn't that is because it's just too hard to use. You can go to Azure and ML and do amazing things, but whoever is able to bring that and really make that accessible to the masses, I think is going to be in for a big win. So those would be the three areas that I would sort of point to that are a little bit more forward-looking.
Okay, perfect. So really appreciate your insights. So I think we have almost spent now half an hour. So I think a lot of informations for us and our partners to consume. And I really want to thank you and hope to speak to you soon. And thanks for the interview, Mike.
Yeah, I want to thank you guys. Thanks for being such a great community. We look forward to our virtual launch event in April, and I think we're going to have some virtual directions events coming up as well.
Perfect. Thank you.